Hello again. This video shows my latest views on the iPad Pro 2018 and is presented containing two parts. Part 1 is a repeat of a video which I originally placed on YouTube in the mid part of January 2019, which showed my exuberance with setting up and playing with the new Magic device, and also highlighting a few of its limitations under the present Apple iOS regime, with its lack of organised file structure and support for a computer mouse, and the difficulty accessing external storage. Part 2 is a video put together in early February 2018 which shows the background to my continuing and maybe escalating enthusiasm for all things Apple, and in particular for the new iPad Pro 2018, maybe used as a toy and entertainment device. It also contains a short discussion about the merits, or otherwise, of the numerous reviews of the device which have been posted on YouTube since the new iPad was launched in November 2018. So on with the motley. Maybe there's no fool like an old fool. Like it or lump it, I've got it. I am a Mac addict approaching my 80th birthday. I've used various Mac devices over the last 20 years or so to store and access information in order to edit videos and photographic images, etc. My devices have included eMacs, MacBook Pros and iMacs, right up to the latest top-end iMac from 2017. I've used various applications such as iMovie and ScreenFlow, and have successfully uploaded many videos to YouTube. Recently, I found a lack of inspiration had developed in my computer interests, and I needed another stimulus to excite me. So I looked at the specification for the latest 11-inch iPad Pro and decided to give this device a whirl and see what transpired. I settled on the 11-inch model with 500 gigabytes of memory together with the Apple Pencil 2 and the Smart Keyboard Folio. All in all, quite an expensive package, which cost rivaled that of the lower-end MacBook Pros. Still, I was looking for a grand toy to stretch me that bit further in my dotage, which would still encourage me in my video and photo editing interests, possibly using apps like LumaFusion and Lightroom, and of course using a touchscreen function. Was I disappointed in my quest? Well, we shall see anon, maybe. People of my generation, born just before World War II, do not take the magic of new technology for granted. My first experience of solid-state devices was when I was 7 years old, and my father, who was a telephone engineer, appeared one day with some strange bits and pieces which he used in his job. These bits and pieces include a germanium diode, a variable condenser, a coil of copper wire, and a pair of GPO high-resistance headphones. Put together with an added aerial and earth, and here was a crystal set capable of receiving radio signals out of the ether. What a revelation to a young lad like me. It was just sheer magic to hear in the headphones the BBC-like programme Home Service and Radio Luxembourg, etc. I was taken aback and smitten with a sense of wonder by this magic. Youngsters nowadays who take computers, smartphones, etc. for granted surely miss out on the way I felt about that humble crystal set. I shall never forget it. I set up the iPad Pro 2018 as recommended, and it was a breeze using my iPhone 5S to set up the initial format. Face recognition worked fine, the screen was superb, but I had problems since I was not used to controlling the iPod with gestures. I'd always used a mouse with previous Mac devices, and with no home button on the iPad, I found operation difficult at first. It was like learning to walk or riding a bicycle as a child. Talk about teaching an old dog new tricks. I was definitely a slow learner in touchscreen control. Anyway, perseverance has its own reward in this respect. I can swipe away as long as the day lasts now. It's just a new way of doing things. Good fun after a lot of exasperation. The first blow to my esteem came when I connected a hard drive to the USB-C port of the iPad Pro. No go at all. I could not at that stage access the videos I had got on my numerous external hard drives. I eventually found a way around this hurdle, which was to transfer files using the option of wireless transfer. I used an old 1TB Seagate Wireless Plus drive, which I had had since 2014, and it contained nearly 1TB of my MP4 videos. This worked flawlessly, so home and dry. Great. However, Seagate have discontinued this wireless drive, so I looked at another alternative on which to put the remainder of my home video collection. I settled on the RAV-Power all-in-one file hub, which I coupled up to a 4TB Western Digital Elements external drive, and this combination yielded fantastic access to the file system for my iPad Pro, running on iOS 12. Success, success. I was delighted, but the fiddling and faffing to get my files to be shown on the iPad Pro was nowhere near as easy as for an external drive attached to an iMac running OS X. 5 out of 10 for Apple. Perhaps they will remedy this failure to access external storage in the next iOS 13 update, as well as provide mouse support. Wishful thinking, I suppose. Whilst on this topic, I did try alternative methods of file transfer between my iMac computer and the iPad Pro. One tactic was to direct link the iPad Pro with the iMac using a USB-C to USB 3.1 cable. This enabled the transfers of home videos to be made using iTunes. Quite a successful operation. Another technique was to use a USB flash drive connected to the USB-C port of the iPad Pro. The flash drive had an appropriately renamed video file, which I set into its root directory. The video file could be imported into the iPad because the iPad was fooled into thinking that the renamed video file came from a camera setup. What we have to do to finally get around Apple restrictions in this iOS software. Finally, I come to review the Apple Smart Keyboard Folio and the Apple Pencil 2. In my opinion, the keyboard is a great addition to the new iPad Pro 2018. It's a bit pricey, but the keyboard works fine with the device, and the folio material also provides good protection. The Apple Pencil is phenomenal with its magnetic coupling and automatic charging. I love to scribble using Apple apps such as Notes. Scribbling reminds me of the time at school when I used to doodle on my exercise books, much to the teacher's annoyance. However, with this new iPad Pro, I can immediately erase the doodles and start again. Naughty boy. Go into detention. Anyway, what fun it is. And to me, this is what the new iPad is all about. Fun, and yes, more fun. Someone my age in the twilight years wants to get some fun out of life. And to some extent, with my computer literacy, this new iPad fulfills this function. However, now onto a more serious note. Please, Apple, give me an iOS update which enables me to connect external storage to the device and hence directly import files. Also, Apple, please give me an appropriate file structure in iOS to store the imported material. I would dearly like to use this new iPad Pro as an alternative to my iMac and MacBook Pro and utilise this touchscreen facility and the iPad's fast processing power to full advantage. Time will tell whether Apple wish to make the iPad Pro a laptop replacement. All for now, and thank you for viewing these ramblings of an old one. Rob the Doc. Thank you. This submission to YouTube is to present a senior citizen perspective of the various reviews of the new iPad Pro 2018, which have been published since mid-December 2018. I have already put on my personal YouTube channel my views as a senior citizen, also known as old age pensioner, of the new iPad Pro, and the conclusion I expressed in that video was that I would use my iPad Pro as more of a fun device, but would continue to use my top-end 2017 iMac and my MacBook Pro for any projects that demanded a fair level of skill and computer literacy. My main beef with the iPad Pro so far has been that there is no organised file structure, and also that I could not directly import information from an external hard drives. Nevertheless, I did find ways around that conundrum, albeit with a lot of digging and delving with various devices, etc., which I simply did not want to do on a regular basis. So let's hope Apple resolves the ongoing issues in a future iOS update, maybe in iOS 13. The problem is certainly not with the iPad Pro hardware, which is super, good, fabulous and fit for purpose. I think at this stage of the video that I should offer some clues as to what led me to invest in the new iPad Pro as a part of my general development. During the early part of the 1960s, I was working towards my PhD, and as a consequence of that study, I generated a considerable number of time series of events which demanded auto and cross correlations, which could be converted by Fourier transforms to generate power spectra showing predominant frequencies, and etc., etc. The only recourse in those days was to manually digitize the data and then use one of the early mainframe computers to generate the quiet auto and cross spectra. At the university where I conducted my studies, there was an English Electric Juice 2 computer, which was later replaced by an English Electric KDF9 computer. These machines occupied large rooms, which housed consoles full of flashing lights and glowing valves and goodness knows what else. The manually digitized data which I generated was entered onto cards and later onto ticker tape. An extremely laborious process indeed, taking hours. These cards and or tape had to be fed into the computer input terminals, and the computations of the original fairly short analog records into power spectra literally took hours on end. What a task. I had to grab computer time in night shifts, as these early computers were used continuously for major college projects during the daytime. I also learned to prepare elementary programs in Algol 60 and Fortran, but I never learnt to use the basic machine codes of Juice 2 or KDF9, which it seemed extremely complex. Anyway, all went well until one evening I was feeding the cards into the card reader when my woolly jumper got caught up into the grinding wheels of the reader as I leant forward to enter the cards. What a fright I had, as the wheels drew me towards those revolving cogs. Anyway, needless to say, I survived the incident, but my pullover was shredded and drawn into the machine innards, perhaps the first person alive to be nearly eaten by a hungry computer. I was not a favourite with the director of the computer facility, which was out of action for a short while, nor with my university professor, who as supervisor had admonished me to take more care in the future. Anyway, that was my first experience with computers. I got my PhD and all was well, and I continued into my research assistantship. I had no more direct experience with computers until 2002, when I invested in an eMac personal computer, and since then my love of all things Apple has continued with the purchase of iPods, iMacs, MacBook and MacBook Pros, and now this new iPad Pro 2018. It was the evolution of my interest in such magic devices as childhood crystal sets, single valve and multi-valve radios, solid state radios, TVs, mainframe computers, and finally personal computers such as the Mac, which has finally led me to the iPad Pro 2018, which I consider a truly wonderful device. With a swipe of the fingers and appropriate gestures, I can sum up the ultimate in optical and acoustic delights. Long live the iPad Pro 2018. It is truly a fun machine and surely will find a well-deserved place in the computer annals of fame. Anyway, as part of my project to investigate the potential of my newly purchased iPad Pro 2018 in mid-December 2018, I started to look at video reviews of my early new device as they show up each day on YouTube. Actually, I then also opened up a file in my 2017 iMac home folder titled iPad Pro 2018 YouTube Reviews. Within this file is now contained downloads of a considerable number of YouTube videos with their weblog origins. I estimate that there are well over 100 weblog files which can be opened on my iMac using the Mozilla Firefox web browser. and also well over 50 or more downloaded MP4 videos of iPad Pro reviews. This gives me quick access to the information stored in these stored files without using the internet to view the downloaded content. I have to admit, I did not download reviews which appeared scrappy or jingoistic, so I've used some acute personal filtering here. Also, reviews which show unboxing and overall geometric features, etc. of the iPad Pro are so numerous that the effect of seeing them constantly becomes very uninspirational, and I generally pass them by now. The files which I have downloaded in my iMac are in general good, well-balanced reviews of the iPad Pro, with a fair degree of technical content and imagination. Anyway, so far so good. So I now have a small database of such video files, approximately 12 gigabytes in size, all reviewing the new iPad Pro 2018. You may well ask what I'm going to do with all these files. Well, I will tell you. Maybe nothing yet. I certainly intend to look at each downloaded file again and again and sort out the wheat from the chaff for my own personal gratification and education. There are some superb inspirational reviews of the new iPad Pro 2018 out there on the YouTube channel, often presented with humour and with all the off-the-cuff remarks from people describing their personal experiences and using their new device over the first few months after the release. Anyway, however, I cannot be on my computer 24/7. It would drive me mad, as well as disrupting my family life. So I'd be very pleased if viewers of this video would let me know via comments of any reviews they consider really significant and earth-shattering concerning the new iPad Pro 2018. I look forward to such comments, and in that light I would anticipate perhaps putting a further review of reviews later on YouTube to be treated as a discussion item. You may well think this video creation here on YouTube is from a cranky old erstwhile academic trying to recapture the glories of his youth. You may well be right. Anyhow, thank you all for viewing. Rob the Doc. I will continue playing on my latest toy like a baby and hopefully enjoy it and not throw it out of the pram. Thank you. Oh, good.